But I know you spar different. I know how you are.
Oh, I thought you meant to spar, like a steam and that.
Like, no, like...
At the UFC 25th anniversary press conference, Mike Perry bumped into Darren Till. Later, the two engaged in a spirited sparring session, going 3 5-minute rounds in an empty conference room back at the hotel. Want to know the psychology behind Perry asking the #1 contender in his division to spar, and why it was all but impossible for Till to refuse? Then stick around. The whole thing started with a bit of miscommunication.
When you getting out of here, Darren? You watching the fight?
Sunday, mate, yeah, Sunday. Yeah. Want to all spar now, yeah? Wait, are you staying here?
Yeah.
Okay,
All I got is little MMA gloves.
yeah.
That's all I got. I don't have bigger gloves.
What, you want to
I got
spar?
the padded training
Sparring?
gloves. But I know you spar different. I know how you are.
Oh, I thought you meant to
hit
spar,
hard.
like a steam and that.
Like, no, like...
Oh, fucking hell, mate, fucking hell.
I meant, let's go fight.
I thought you meant get a spar. Oh, was you mean sparring, really? Fucking hell, mate. If you want, yeah, we can have a little go, yeah, sweet. I haven't got no gloves, if you've got some gloves in that, yeah.
If you thought it was strange that a #1 contender would have an impromptu sparring session with a rival in the division, especially one he shared heat with, you'd be right. After some initial confusion over exactly what was being asked, Till does agree to spar with Perry. What makes the scene so funny is Mike Perry is the perfect straight man here. He's clearly oblivious to the revelation dawning on Till. Till becomes more and more animated, trying to get Perry to share a laugh at the absurdity of confusing spa with spar. But Perry's locked in, just thinking about how to best convince Till that they should spar. When Till shows disbelief at his own mix-up, Perry interprets it as reluctance.
What, you want to
I got
spar?
the padded training
Sparring?
gloves. But I know you spar different. I know how you are.
Oh, I thought you meant to
hit
spar,
hard.
like a steam and that.
Like, no, like...
Oh, fucking hell, mate, fucking hell.
I meant, let's go fight.
Perry's so earnest about this, he comes across almost naive or childlike. It's sort of charming. That's why Till just wants to give him a hug. It makes sense for guys who train all the time to ask each other if they want to do the sauna together. It's not that much fun to sit in there by yourself for hours at a time.
None. I didn't get the gist of what he said. We were at the press conference and he said, Till, do you fancy a spar after the press conference? And I thought he meant to spar, like a sauna and a steam. So I said, yeah, sound. And then when we got to the hotel, he was like, so you ready? Gloves and that? And I went, what do you mean? He went, no, sparring. No, I went, oh, you want to spar? He went, yeah. I went, yeah, so.
What's more unusual is a rival in the division to ask the #1 contender if he wants to spar while you're both in town for some random press event. Nobody does that. Can you imagine Kevin Lee asking Khabib Nurmagomedov to spar just because they happen to bump into one another? Well, Kevin might ask, but only as a joke. And there's no way Khabib takes him up on it. When Till finally realizes what Perry actually wants, it's a little unbelievable. Then it's nothing but respect, because who's asking him to spar? Till is notorious for his hard sparring. Perry addresses this.
But I know you spar different. I know how you are.
Oh, I thought you meant to
hit
spar,
hard.
like.
Perry's willing to accept it, if that's how Till goes. It's clearly a priority to him to have a session with Till if at all possible. But what about the rivalry? Who could forget Till's call out of Mike Perry during his Octagon interview with David Byrne's jacket?
Mike Perry, me and you were meant to fight. I asked for the fight. You're matched against Santiago.
That was just after Till finished Cowboy, so he was on the rise, and suddenly everybody wanted to see Till versus Perry. The problem was Perry already had a bout with Santiago Ponzinibbio. At the time, Perry was positive he would grease Ponzi, and that would set things up for him and Till. It would be that much more anticipated. Unfortunately, Perry was yet to learn that successful fighters in the UFC use strategy and game plans specifically for each opponent. Ponzinibbio had a reputation for knockouts and aggression, plus he told anyone who would listen during the build-up that he was going to knock out Mike Perry. Being a little naive, Perry believed him, which made it that much easier for Ponzi to beat him with a game plan and a little footwork. Max Griffin followed the same exact script to hand Perry back-to-back losses, while Till picked up a crafty victory over longtime #1 contender Stephen Thompson. Till versus Perry no longer made sense, but Mike Perry seemed focused on getting it back just before his recent bout with Paul Felder.
Darren Till versus Mike Perry, like, is that a fight you
I gotta make that happen too. You know, he's done great Good for him, man. He's gotten up to number 2. Don't know when the UFC would be willing to give me that fight, depending on the performance on Saturday. I got some plans for after, but I'm working to get to that. He called me out, and he deserves it. He earned it. I'm gonna earn it. And I'm gonna go get that fight. Me and Darren Till are gonna put on one of the greatest fights you've ever seen.
There are many reasons Mike Perry wants to spar with Darren Till. He wants to get back the opportunity he lost, but more than anything, Perry believes Darren Till is still the best path to get him where he wants to go.
Why wait? I have this opportunity right now to spar the number 1 contender, and I'm a good look when it comes to T. Woodley's power punching. I'm the same height pretty much, stocky build, short and thick. It was good for him, and it was good for me. It was great to see. It was a pleasure to get to work with the young man. What can I say, man? We like to fight, and I had the opportunity to spar the number 1 contender, and I knew he wasn't going to say no.
For Perry, if there's any doubts about whether you truly belong with the guys at the top of the division, what could be better than sparring with the number 1 dude? It's a major advantage for Perry to get a look and feel for someone like Till, who's so big and rangy for the division. They didn't even need to go hard. Even a light spar will give him information to work with. The psychological advantage could be huge for Perry. Nothing creates anxiety and doubt like the unknown. Right or wrong, Mike Perry now has a sense about Till. He no longer feels in the dark. Conversely, it shows how confident Darren Till must be, because when you're the awkward guy with your size and style, you don't give potential rivals free looks.
I've got rivalry with everyone. Anyone who steps on my way, I've got rivalry with them. There's a big difference between respect and rivalry. Like, I respect everyone who's a fighter, but yeah, he is out of fighting a nice person. So, I've got time for him if he ever wants to spar in the future, train or whatever, yeah. But that doesn't mean that when we're going to fight, I'm going to be nice or he's going to be nice. I'm still going to try and take him out as he'll do to me, do you know what I mean? So,
yeah, we're going to get some work. Appreciate it.
Perry explains how things went down. Sounds like a damn movie.
So we just rolled out and we went over to the Fighters Hotel because there was a workout room in our hotel. We grabbed the mat together because they were putting everything up. And we picked up the mat and dragged it to the other room and laid it down on the ground, spread it out, and then he started warming up and I was like, we gotta warm up, let's go. I started moving around a little bit. This motherfucker's over there rolling his shoulders out and shit. I'm like, here we go. And then the gloves that he had, so he had 16-ounce boxing gloves and I had Jackson Wink training 8-ounce MMA gloves. I was like, well, you're Southpaw, I'm Orthodox. I was like, how about we put the small MMA glove on the jab hand, and we put the big glove on our power hand. He was like, okay, yeah. He didn't even have a mouthpiece. I put mine in. I was like, well, I got mine. I understand that, though. I spar without mouthpieces all the time. I told him he should put the paper towel in his mouth. But it was good work, man. We were both nice. I'm not gonna lie. We were both nice because we weren't trying to be disrespectful. We wanted to see the movement, but we was cracking each other too, and we went 3 5-minute rounds, and we had a good little fight. I gotta say, man, it was a pleasure. I'm not gonna say anything else though. What is the world looking for me to say? Oh, I won. No, nobody won. If he says he won, well then, you Darren Till, but nobody won. We learned that day. That was a great day, I think, for learning martial arts.
It's this type of honest reflection that makes Mike Perry a compelling character.
Got a little extra blood on my mouthpiece. Appreciate the work, champ. T. Woodley, I'm sorry, bro. I don't know who's going to win the fight, though. I fuck with both of y'all, though. I got to say that.
Woodley's going to win.
Perry has a bit of the seeker in him. He doesn't always verbalize his ideas in a way that makes it apparent just how deep he looks at the world.
Well, here's the thing about training. People are like, oh, you guys are best buds, best mates now. No, it's not that. And it's not that we hate each other either. We're looking at each other like, one day this guy is going to want to try to kill me, take what I got growing and going for myself. I lost my opportunity. I got to earn the right to fight the kid. The kid's done better than I have. So I was like, look, I knew he wanted to punch me in the face. So I asked him, you want to spar? Till threw me to the floor a couple of times. He's so big. His tie is pretty good. When we got in the clinch, we're turning some angles and he caught me off balance and tripped and threw me to the floor. I got back up, but fuck you, Darren, Till, just throwing me to the floor like that. You know what happened last time I sparred somebody famous? They started to fight against them because they wanted to see what the fuck happened. So maybe we'll see that Till Perry fight.
If rumors of his sparring session with Cowboy Cerrone led to the UFC booking them as a main event, you can imagine what's possible if the legend of what happened between him and Till continues to grow.
Want to ring the bell?
All right. Ding, ding. Come on, Stan. Come on.
I think you taught me too good. You can fly.
Look out now. No, you don't want any of this. Come on.
Maybe I'm in here with the wrong guy.
Come on, watch yourself. Ready?
Remember, this isn't supposed to be easy.